So as we're all well aware, the fine folks over at IK Multimedia just recently released their brand new Tonex Pedal, and it's causing quite a buzz in the guitar community, and for good reason. It's a really spectacular little pedal. Now, there is one feature, when I say feature, I should actually say parameter, that is going to be extremely important and that could very, very easily be overlooked. And I wanted to make you aware of this, just in case any of you who receive your Tonex pedal find that maybe things aren't sounding correct in comparison to the software. And the folks at IK Multimedia put a very important thing in the global settings that can really make or break whether we're getting what we want out of Tonex Pedal. Now you might ask what that is. Well, one thing anybody who's created tone models know, especially using the Tonex capture box that I have here beside me, you need to send a signal out of the Tonex software into the amplifier that you're trying to model. So essentially you're going to be reamping. So the Tonex capture box works as a wonderful reamp box. But when we're doing these Tonex models and going through the initial pages and setup to capture a model, and we set our inputs and we set our outputs, and we have everything working the way we want, there is a page where it asks us to test our guitar input and to get it into a certain range. And that will require us to possibly raise the inputs on our DI'd guitar that we have going into our audio interface. Now, that isn't going to directly affect the capture, but I believe the reason for that is just to simply match that level up with the next step, which is to go onto the front of the capture box and potentially attenuate the signal that is being sent to the amp so that we get those two sounding as close as possible to what we want to capture. Once we feel that those are set properly, we then go ahead and send the capture test tones and guitar riffs through the amp model. We obviously end up with a resulting tone model in our software. Now, the way that this tone model sounds is going to be very dependent on what guitar we plug into it, and this really goes for any modeler. If we have a guitar with extremely high output pickups, it's going to hit the front of that model harder, and that model may saturate more. We may be pushing the front end of that virtual amp harder so we get more overdrive and distortion, which may or may not be what we want. So we could come across situations where we created a tone model. It sounds one way in the software because we're feeding it through one particular audio interface. But then when we transfer it to Tonex Pedal, we're now using the front end input of Tonex Pedal, which could potentially be feeding a slightly hotter signal than we are getting from our audio interface. So I found this with some of the captures that I made. They sounded a certain way in the software, but then when I transfer them to the pedal, maybe they seemed like there's a little bit more saturation here. Well, the folks from IK Multimedia put a really great feature into the global settings. If we find this is happening with any of our captures, or if we just find maybe the amp model is saturating more than we would have thought it would, or maybe because our guitar pickups are hot, they have added in this setting here in the global settings. First of all, we would want to navigate to global settings. Once we're there, we're going to navigate to Input Trim. Which is actually notated as Trim In on the screen. So what that gives us the ability to do is to cut or boost the input level globally of what is entering Tonex Pedal. Now, at first glance, you might go, I'll just leave it at 0. But if we're playing a tone model through the software and then putting it in Tonex Pedal and it's not sounding the same, we need to make an adjustment here. And the nice thing is it's just global. Once we set it, we can just leave it. It's going to apply to all of our tone models, and we can rest assured that we're going to be getting as close to identical a sound as what we got from our software. So I'm going to give you some tone examples now, utilizing one of the tone models from my Ultimate Plexi tone model bundle, which I will have the link below. There's a free preset, and there's also a full featured paid tone bundle, which is going to have many, many tone models at various settings and some really nice tones that I've really been enjoying. At the end of the video, I will play you a demo of how these sound utilized in a mix. So let's go over and see just how much of a difference this trim control can make. So as we can see over here, I have the identical preset and tone model on both Tonex Pedal and on Tonex software. So I'm just going to leave this set the way it is. I'm going to come out of this, and you'll notice here inside of Cubase, I have two tracks set up. One is called Tonex software, one is called Tonex Pedal. I have my guitar signal coming out of my Vigier GV Wood split going into both the DI'd input of my Focusrite Claret instrument input, which is set with no extra gain, how I would normally record out of it, and how I would have crafted this particular tone model when creating it. And then over here I have Tonex Pedal. So you'll notice Tonex software is muted. If I solo this, and you see this soloed, you are going to be hearing the Tonex software. When this is unsoloed and muted, you'll notice that we're then going to be hearing Tonex Pedal. So here's what Tonex Pedal sounds like right now. Now, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. You might go, this is perfect, this is great, sounds amazing. I could dial my volume back. Cleans up, and when I crank it up, it saturates more. Now, somebody using this preset wouldn't really know whether that's what it was supposed to sound like when it was created, but if this was labeled to be a very clean setting or clean tone model, and we found that it was saturating and breaking up, we might kind of go, this doesn't sound very clean. And you might think that the person who made the tone model messed something up. Or is it that we're just hitting the front of that tone model with too much signal? Much in the way that when I turn my guitar on 10, it has a certain level of saturation. If I turn it down, that saturation cleans up. So this is a well-known tool that guitar players use on stage sometimes, or even in the studio, to control how much saturation there is. Roll your guitar volume back a bit, the amp isn't saturating as much. Well, if we're hitting that tone model with more signal than was intended when it was created, we're going to have this issue where we're not necessarily getting anything bad, but we're not getting what we want out of it. So I'm going to play this again now with the input trim on Tonex Pedal set to 0, which is where I showed you I had it set before. And I'm going to show you what it sounds like in comparison to going straight into the software with my guitar plugged into my Focusrite Claret instrument input. So when I solo this again, you're going to hear Tonex software. When this is unsoloed, it's Tonex Pedal. Here's the pedal again. So somebody doing this comparison might go, well, wait a sec, these things don't sound anything alike. That's the same tone model, the same preset, both not being processed with anything else. One is louder with more saturation, one is softer with less saturation, and we might scratch our heads and wonder what's going on. Well, what is happening in this case is the Tonex pedal is just hitting the front of that particular tone model with too much signal. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into the guitar input trim setting in global settings, and I'm going to change that and hopefully fix it. Now you'll notice that I pulled that back by 13 dB. Now let's compare the Tonex software with the Tonex pedal. If we still find that we feel that's a little bit off, we could go and make another small adjustment. Now, you might be hearing little inconsistencies simply because I'm not playing the exact same thing 2 times in a row. What we would have to do is reamp the identical performance between the two and then A/B between those. And I've actually done that before making this video and found out that these can be made to sound pretty much identical, but it's going to be very dependent on how much input we are hitting the front end with. So I think it was a really great thing that the folks at IK Multimedia thought of putting this adjustable guitar input pad in to our Tonex pedals, so that if you're finding that your software tone models and your hardware tone models aren't really sounding the same, very likely by making a one-time adjustment in that global setting, we're going to have it work much better and be much closer matched between the software and the hardware. All right, I hope you guys enjoyed that. I thought that that was a pretty important topic to cover, simply because you could actually be playing your Tonex pedal with the same preset or tone model that you were utilizing with the software and finding that it was sounding quite different. And that guitar input trim may be just the ticket for you to be able to dial that in and get it sounding exactly how you desire. So I hope that that helps some folks to get the most out of their Tonex pedal. Please like the video. Please share it with anybody who you think would get some use or enjoyment out of watch. And also hit the subscribe button and hit the little bell notification to get notified when I put new content out. I'll be back really soon with some more. Thank you guys again so much for tuning in. Ciao for now.